Michael Crossland, welcome to Roll with the Punches.
Tiff, great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to a good session with you.
I tell you what, I am pumped this morning. I can't think of a better Monday morning guest to come on and get me fired up. You know how I've met you 3.5 minutes ago?
Yes.
And aside from that, there's been an email and a quick 2 minutes on the phone. But I just had this sense, I have this sense of your energy because I've watched a little bit of your content. You've got this amazing energy, mind-blowing story, but I think it's your energy that I'm most excited about, and it's going to pump me up for the whole week because I've got a busy week and I kind of need it.
Unreal. I'm ready to pump you up and pump everybody up that's listening. So let's get stuck in. And again, I say, I'm just an ordinary old Australian that's faced my fair share of challenges and now very blessed and privileged to be able to share it with the world. So thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. And hey, everyone listening, when he says ordinary, he missed the extra off the front of that word. He's shortened it. He's actually an extraordinary human. I'm not even going to go too much into your bio. I might leave that till I'm a bit better prepared and I tack on a intro at the start of this because it's amazing. You're incredible. But a couple of things. You've got an Australian Story documentary that over 4 million people have watched. Just an easy 4 million interested in your story. You were a baton bearer at the Commonwealth Games.
It was a bit of fun.
Kind of a big deal. And you've been, I'm not even going to go too much into your story because you've been through a hell of a lot and I'm going to kind of leave that up to you. But you are one of Australia's best and most sought after motivational speakers and I can see why. So welcome and hi.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here and thanks for pumping up the tyres. But I really believe that. I think through great darkness and great adversity, that is that discovery moment. And I think the more darkness I've faced, the more I've discovered around what I can achieve and what I've been told all my life I can't. And I really believe that the more we strive to prove ourselves right, as opposed to striving to prove others wrong, the more we can accomplish whilst we are on this earth.
Oh, I love this. I'm really going to love this. I've got a very similar theory around the adversity thing, and I'm going to love hearing all of your take on everything. So tell us about it started at normally when I say start at the very, very beginning, people aren't talking about when they were born, but you are.
Yeah, I was 11 months old when I went to the doctors with my mum and my sister. She had an ear infection. And as I was leaving the room, I'm much more of a hugger. I don't really do the handshake thing. Now I do. Now I just do a bow. I don't even do a hug or a handshake or an elbow or anything. I just sort of bow and walk away, and then cover myself in hand sanitizer. But I gave the doctor a hug. His knee brushed my stomach. Long story short, I was taken to Coffs Harbour Hospital because he didn't think that my stomach felt normal for an 11-month-old boy. I was airlifted to Sydney Hospital that night, and the following morning I was diagnosed with stage 4 incurable cancer of the central nervous system called neuroblastoma. They told me there was no chance of survival. My mum asked one question, and I think we all have challenges, and one thing that I've discovered in my life and working with the top 100 CEOs around the world and pro athletes and all that, we all have very similar pain. What I think is different is our solutions, and it's our mindset towards those solutions and our problems that ultimately determine the quality of life that we get to live. And my mum asked one question. I don't want to know what the chances are of my son dying. I want to know what the chances are of my son surviving. And they said I had a 96% death rate. And as quickly as she heard those words, she focused on the 4% as opposed to the 96. And, I'm eternally grateful for her optimism, her resilience, and her courage to take care of me. And I think the one thing that I've discovered of recent times, that it is far easier lying in the bed than standing next to it. And what she had to stand next to and look over is something that I hope in my greatest prayers that I never have to experience. I started chemo on my first birthday. My chemo cycle was 9 days on, 3 days off, not for weeks or months, but for years. I was on that same trial, on that same treatment until just before my 4th birthday, when the tumor had built a resistance. It took over half my body. It was wrapped around my heart. It was crushing my aorta and my spine. We went into surgery. 6 hours later, they said we didn't get it all. My family were flown from Coffs Harbour down to Sydney to come into my room and say goodbye. And the next day, there was an American doctor. He was trialing an experimental drug. He was trialing it on 25 patients around the world, and he had 24 candidates, and he asked whether we wanted to be number 25. And long story short, we obviously said yes. We really believe that outside of love, hope is one of the most powerful words in the English dictionary. And we started the drug with 24 other families, and unfortunately, the drug was catastrophic. The side effects were unbelievably painful. We were all transferred from the oncology ward to the burns unit. The drug burnt us from the inside out. So what they would do is they would wrap us up in bandages, and they would lie us in baths full of ice, trying to prevent our brains from frying. And unfortunately, within 90 days, 24 out of the 25 of us that were on that drug had passed away.
Oh my
God. I say to people all around the world that I'm one of the lucky ones, but I never say I'm one of the lucky ones because I'm still alive. I say I'm one of the lucky ones because I wasn't my mum. All I had to do is lie in bed and feel the pain, whereas my mum had to make a choice to inject a drug that has killed every single person ever taken it. She had to go to death counselling once a week for 2 hours to deal with what was going to happen to a little boy. And I can only imagine that fear and that pain and that uncertainty and suffering that she experienced for such a long time. You know, she burned me for 18 months, and eventually I was allowed to go home. And they said I'd never go to school, I'd never play sport, I'd be a housebound baby, and if I reached my teenage years, it'd be a miracle. And I asked her when she came through after speaking to the doctors, what did the doctors say? And she said to me, the doctors told me that everything was going to be okay. And for a woman to be able to carry the burden and the fear of a son dying to allow me to lead a normal life was, something that I am, I'm returning the favor, which I'm sure we'll get to later in the story. But I was lucky enough. I went to school. Time at school was really challenging. I was different. I had no hair and no eyelashes and scabby skin. Just had to sit on a nebulizer every recess and lunchtime. So I got picked on horrifically at school, but it didn't kill me. It only made me stronger. And I had this dream of wanting to play baseball in America, and I really zoned in and realized that if I want to be that person that falls into the 1% category that gets a chance to achieve their dreams, I need to be the person that does 10% extra than anybody else that allows me to achieve that. And long story short, I started playing a game that I loved. Yes, there was a lot of hiccups along the way. As you know, I had my first heart attack when I was 12 from the side effects of the drug. And then 2 years after being told I'd never play sport again, I made the under-16 Australian Expos team. I flew to America. I played baseball over there. I got a chance to achieve my dreams. I played in that same league for every year for the next 4 years until I was lucky enough to sign a full-ride scholarship to live in America and play baseball at the age of 17, and got to study sports psychology. And my dreams had come true. And as we all know, life is very much like a roller coaster. We can get to a pinnacle point, it could get taken away from us in a heartbeat. And I was only over there for 6 months before I slid into a base in Arizona and woke up 3 days later, and my career was done. I never played baseball in America again, and my health had deteriorated. My heart couldn't compete, and I was sent home. And as you mentioned, I was lucky enough to feature on Australian Stories, and then I got a job in banking and climbed my way up into a corporate ladder. And I had 600 staff at the age of 23, and yeah, then I
not at all an overachiever, Michael. Not at all an overachiever.
Then I realised though that I was chasing the perception of what I thought success was. I had to have the multi-million-dollar house and the sports cars and the Rolexes, and the more I chased it, the further it took me away from it. And in 2009, I got really sick again. I got bacterial meningitis, I got fluid on the brain, had Bell's palsy down the right-hand side of my body, and I pretty much had just had enough. And not only enough of the corporate world, probably enough of fighting, enough of battling through those dark days. And I remember praying to God every night that I just could go to sleep and not wake up. And I think it was in those dark moments in my life, and for many others, I'm sure, that we discover that the two greatest days in one's life is the day that we are born and the day that we discover why we are born.
Mm.
And through hardship, that is, I feel, when often we realize why we were put on this earth. And for me, it was two reasons. One, I needed to understand what success was. And the second thing is I needed to understand what giving was all about. And I understand now success is not about how big my house is. It's about how big my heart is. It's about getting out of bed every day and knowing that I can make a difference in somebody else's life. And the second thing is this whole gift of giving. I realize we need to give without remembering and receive without forgetting. And we need to have this passion and this dream in our hearts to simply get out of bed and make a difference in somebody else's life. And now it's been a wild ride since then. We've been told we couldn't start a family, so we decided to open an orphanage in the school. We've got 270 kids attend our school full time in Haiti, and we opened an orphanage. We have 44 kids that live there, and we went over there because there was an earthquake that hit Haiti in 2010 and killed 316,000 people and left millions of people homeless. And I thought that was my transition out of corporate to serve and impact those that could never return the favor. And I was sick of donating money to charities that were, taking $45 out of the $50 we donate to, provide whatever it is in the corporate back end so that $5 goes to the kids. So that's when we started our own charity called Frontier Projects, where every cent gets sent. And that was really my mission, to be able to serve and impact as many as I could. And that has certainly fulfilled my heart and my life. And then the speaking world really started to open up in 2015, 16. I was lucky enough to tour with the Dalai Lama. I've toured with Richard Branson. I've spoken all around the world. I've worked with troops in Iraq fighting for our freedom, 9/11 victims and their families, juvenile detention centers, and everything in between. And, I really do say that humbly again, that I mentioned at the beginning. I really believe that I am just an ordinary Australian who has a heart for impact, a heart for service, and a heart for striving to make the world a little bit better place than what I found it. And I know that, my challenges continue. In 2016, I was unfortunately diagnosed with 4 more tumors of the throat. And I postponed surgery just long enough so I could write a book, my autobiography, which now is a bestseller in 6 countries around the world. And we wrote that book because I wanted to make sure that I could take care of my mum and my wife after I was gone, because it didn't look like I was going to get through it. But now, since that day, I'm still alive, so we've never taken a cent from the book. We've donated close to $600,000 to charity. And, I'm just eternally grateful to still be here. Surgery was somewhat a success. They removed 3 out of the 4 tumors. The 4th tumor is still wrapped around my vocal cord. And I've realized that the quality of one's life is not dictated, nor is it determined by the amount of days you live on this earth. To me, it's about what we fit into those days that allows me to live a remarkable life. And I assure you, I am going to do everything I can for the rest of my days on this earth to fit as much in as I possibly can to serve and impact and strive to make the world a bit better place. Because, me, like everybody else listening, no one at all is guaranteed tomorrow. And I'm going to make sure that I go to my final resting place with no regrets. In 2019, I was on 187 flights. I spoke in 22 countries around the world. I had a video go viral. It's had more than 88 million views now. And I'm just so grateful that the message intended is the message being received in this world.
Excuse my language, but fuck, you're a special human. Honestly, and God, wow. Like sitting here, just hearing that from you in the moment feels like such a blessing to me. And what stands out is, as you talk about that, and in my mind, I am just processing the ripple effect of your story on the millions of lives that are touched because you're putting it out there, but not once have you portrayed a sense of, I'm changing the world by sharing my story. Your way to give back was different. Your way to give back was to go and, you know, create, founded the orphanage, and you're amazing. There's another beautiful woman I had on the show. She's a female bodybuilder, and I thought she was coming on. We were going to talk about, you know, what she does, and she shared the story of her son, quite a traumatic upbringing as well, but her son, when she had a son born, he was given a 1% chance to live. And just like your mother, she said, all right, well, I will focus on the 1%, and he's still alive today. I believe he's 6 or 7 now. But amazingly strong women they are.
Yeah, they are. I really mean it, that adversity in our life does not define us. How we deal with our adversity does. And I'm sure everybody that listens to your show has a story. They could all come on here and share some sort of pain and suffering. But I think that there are only 2 types of people in the world. There are those that use the pain and suffering of their past to justify poor choices and make excuses to why they have failed in life. And then there are those that use the exact same pain and suffering, if not much worse, as that desire and that motivation and that kick up the you-know-where that sometimes we need to just not quit and succeed in life. And I don't mean success as materialistic wealth that we create, but I mean success as the freedom to live a life that is filled with abundance of happiness and joy and life. You know, I think that's what success is, because as I said, I still work with some people that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they hate their life. And I just think it just demonstrates so perfectly that money, doesn't buy happiness, and money doesn't make your life free or happy. It's what you do with the life that you've been given that ultimately determines how successful you can be. And I see some people that, like my kids in Haiti, they got no mum, no dad, no iPad, no laptop, nothing. And they got out of bed this morning and they thought they had everything. And I think, can you imagine if that was the way you got through your challenges every day, because you had this amazing experience of gratitude every morning you woke up because you had the ability to wake up? It's just, they're not existing, they're truly living. And I think that's what we all need to do. We need to start to truly live regardless of the story or the challenges that we've been given.
Oh, 100%. I was running fitness retreats in Thailand for a couple of years, and one thing that stood out to me was we would go there with all of our fancy people, and we'd stay in this beautiful resort, but we'd get up in the mornings and we'd pick our PT for the time we were there, and these boxing trainers over there are up at the crack of dawn, and for what is next to nothing for us, they are doing these PT sessions with a smile on their face for bugger all money. They sleep on a concrete, they sleep in this tiny little 4 walls with a concrete and a bloody pillow, and it's just nothing, but they're so happy.
Yeah.
And I look at the, privileged travelers that come in, and we're staying in a resort and we're having a break from our busy lives, and it just the burdens that we carry in our minds and our hearts without realizing everything that we have and just being happy. What I want to know though, like just in your life, there's iteration after iteration of challenge that almost, Jesus, how many times can you have something happen that's a big deal that's almost not even related to the one time before and not go, why me? Like, how do you get through how do you stay resilient when something new pops up and you're like, oh, come on?
Yeah, there's a funny story that I share when I'm on stage, and it's about a little boy who was riding his motorbike and fell off, and a stick got jammed in his leg. And I was lying next to him actually in hospital when it all happened. I'd had a pretty bad accident on my thumb, and I remember the nurse walked in and she pulled the sheet back and she's like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And he's like, "Oh, I was cruising through the bush, went around the corner, I fell off, this stick got jammed up in my leg." He said, "It's okay, it could be worse." This kid's probably 7 or 8. And I'm thinking, what do you mean it could be worse? You've got a giant stick in your leg. And the nurse says, what do you mean it could be worse? You've got a stick in your leg. You're going to be on crutches. You're not going to be able to swim. You're going to have surgery. How could it be worse? And I kid you not, this sweet, beautiful little boy said, hey, nurse, I promise you it could be worse. The stick could have got me in the balls. I still remember like it was yesterday. And I think, that's so true. Like, we all have shit and we all go through hell and back, but it could always be so much worse. And I think perspective is such a powerful tool and a powerful gift to be able to empower us to be able to overcome and get through. And I think that's one thing that I try and do a lot is when times get tough and when challenges are thrown at me and when I get given end dates, I think, man, A, you're not God, so you're not going to tell me when my time's up. And B, I have lived a life of ups and downs and highs and lows, but I've actually lived. I'm going to go that last breath I take and know that I haven't lived a life that has been filled with regrets. And I think that is truly living. It's not existing. And for me, it's, yes, I've got some tools and principles that I deal with. When I'm in that victim mentality, when my mind's down and out, I try and do three things. I try and do some sort of exercise. I'm sure in your history and background and knowledge and education, you understand the importance of getting your heart rate pumping and do something. The second thing I try and do is I try and share. I really believe that it is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength to put your hand up and communicate with somebody, especially right now with everything going on in the world.
Yeah.
The first step is not speaking to somebody. The first step is making the choice to want to speak to somebody, because once you acknowledge that you need some sort of support, you're already on the way. You're already tracking towards that greater outcome. And then the last thing I think that I try and do as often as I can is I just try and help people that are less fortunate than what I am. I try and help people that can never return the favor. And the analogy that I like to use is something that I used to do versus what I do now. Back in the day, I'd pay for people's fuel. So I'd go to the service station, I'd pay for my fuel, I'd pay for somebody else's fuel. Then I'd sit in the car and I'd wait for you to go inside and you'd go to pay for the fuel. And then the person behind the counter would say, that guy over there in the car paid for it. And then you'd look at me and go, oh, thank you so much, that's so nice of you. And then I'd feel really good and I'd drive off. But then I realized the only reason why I was paying for your fuel is so I could be thanked. I was only paying for your fuel because I was focused on the return on investment of what I was doing for somebody else. And then I realized that that's not why we should give. We should give expecting nothing in return. I think that's when we really receive the outcome and the fruits of our giving. So now I pay for people's fuel and then I just drive off. And I don't know whether they're grateful. I don't know whether they're, take the money and go and stick it in the TAB, or whether they put it in the poker machines or buy cigarettes with it, or whether they are just unbelievably grateful and now they can go and do something with somebody else. And my only hope is that they pay a good deed forward. But I'm not doing it because I want to be thanked or acknowledged for my kindness. I'm doing it just because I'm doing it. I spoke at an event in Townsville just 2 days ago, and it was in honor of a man that died about 10 years ago. And this conference has been running for 10 years. And they said, what's amazing about this gentleman named Tony is that when he died, there were so many people at his funeral and everybody was sharing stories about things that he'd done that nobody knew of. Oh. And I'm like, that's what, like, I don't want to be the guy that puts up videos of me paying for somebody's fuel or giving somebody a bunch of flowers, or, that's not my role. That's not who I want to be. I don't need to be acknowledged for my kindness. I can acknowledge my own kindness through lying in bed at nighttime with my gratitude journal, reflecting on, did I make the world a little better today? Did I make somebody's world a little better today? And if I can answer that yes, then I can go to sleep over nighttime with a smile on my face.
This is probably one of the most powerful messages I feel like you've just articulated, and one that without self-awareness and deliberate reflection, we can fall into the trap of, like you did at first, which is not a bad one, paying for people's bit, but acknowledging that actually I'm doing this for me. And I can change the narrative of that and be a little bit less selfish, a little bit more selfless.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure you know about all the chemicals, and those that are listening may not be aware of them, but, you know, we have dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and all these chemicals that actually make us feel good about ourselves. And we have the ability to self-hack. So we have an opportunity in our lives when we're feeling down about ourselves to identify that we're not feeling good, and then acknowledging what chemicals we need to induce into our lives to make us feel better. And recently I had some pretty heavy news Monday a week ago about some stuff in my throat again, unfortunately. And I was just feeling down and out and, you know, in that woe is me mode. And I was like, what can I do? So I just wrote a really nice card, and it was just like, hey, I just want to let you know you're loved, you're valued, you're beautiful on the inside and the out, and people care about you. Your purpose on this earth is huge. And I just put a love heart and I put $50 in it. And then I just had it in my pocket all day. And I was, you know, just doing my thing. And then I saw this lady get out, and she was in a nurse's outfit. And, you know, she'd obviously just come from work, and she looked like the world was against her. And I just went up to her and said, hey, there's a part of my heart that wants to give this to you. And I gave it to her, and I quickly drove off.
Oh.
And, you know, it made me feel so good. And the endorphins and everything just made me feel amazing inside. And now with everything going on in the world and a lot of stuff that I'm doing on TV and social media and stuff, unfortunately, this woman knew me or knew of me. But that night I get home and I've got this Facebook message from her on my business page saying, you have no idea how much that's touched me. We lost a patient today. I was almost suicidal. I didn't know what to do and how I felt. I lost all hope and all value. And then I read your letter, and it just changes everything. And I just think we all don't need to write fancy letters and give away money. We just need to open our eyes and our hearts to want to show kindness to others. And it's just that one person that you share a smile with, that one person that you say hello to, that's sitting there on a park bench all alone, that could ultimately just shift and change that person's life forever. So it doesn't take money to be kind, right?
Again, your intuition on holding on to that all day and knowing when it was the right time and the right person to give that, that's so powerful. My listeners are going to kick me if I don't ask this question. Where do you fill up? What's your local fuel station?
I don't pay for the diesel Bowser anymore because that's like $200 for a fill. So nah.
I reckon you made some people happy lately.
Funny, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wow. You've had, oh God, so many massive things to get through in your life. What has been the hardest?
Yeah, there's been lots. You know, I think, as I mentioned earlier, standing next to the bed is so much harder than lying in it. And that's why I admire and have so much love for my mum for what she has gone through. But I think the hardest for me was in 2017, we were told my entire life that due to all my treatment, we would never be able to start a family. And in 2017, we announced to the world that they were wrong, and we had the most incredible blessing of my wife falling pregnant. Unfortunately, it had nothing to do with lots and lots of practice. It had to do with lots and lots of IVF. But we were due to have a baby the end of February 2018. But on the 8th of December 2017, my wife was 29 weeks pregnant, and she had a lot of back pain. We went to the hospital. We found out that she was 2 centimeters dilated. We were immediately airlifted from the hospital here in Coffs Harbour down to the Royal in Randwick. And she was pumped full of every steroid known to man. And what was amazing, and I don't normally share this, in fact, I don't think I've ever shared this online, is a week before my wife went into labour, I was asked to do an event for a charity that I'd never heard of. And I was exhausted. It had been a huge year. And, you know, I talk about acknowledging the coincidences a lot. But this company said, come on, please, we need you. And I was like, no, I'm done. And they said, we've got no money to pay you. And I was like, you know, I've done 20 charity events for the year. I'm out. And then, I don't know, my heart just said, all right, just suck it up and do it. Just go and serve these people. So I did an event for a charity called the Miracle Babies Foundation. And I'd never heard of them before. And we raised $15,000 or whatever it was for them. It was just a small event here in town. And then on the 8th, we were transferred to Sydney. And then on the morning of the 12th, I was asked to go through the NICU ward. And I was like, mate, I've spent most of my life in hospital. I don't need to go in there. They said, we're taking you in there. So we went into NICU. We saw level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1, the kids are just not doing great, but they're nearly on their way out. Level 2, they're really, really struggling. And level 3, I remember the person said to me, this is where you do not want your child to ever end up, because many of these babies will never go home. And some of the kids had no skin, they were just little bones and in glass containers. And I was a real mess, and I left, and I struggled a lot for the rest of the day. And then at 6:40 p.m. that evening, my wife gave birth to what I say is the sweetest little boy in the world. So she gave birth to our son named Lachlan James, who was incredibly unwell, who was 11 weeks early, and my wife had to go into another room. So I went with my little boy, who was put in a plastic bag and stuck in a glass container, into ICU, and he was wheeled through ICU level 1, level 2, and straight into ICU level 3. And I broke as a man. I broke as a dad. And I remember I fell to the ground when they found his little booth that he was going to sort of hang out in. And I was on my hands and knees crying. And I felt this soft hand touch my shoulder. And she said, Michael, my name is Barbara. I'm the CEO of the Miracle Babies Foundation. We're going to take care of you and your family.
Oh, my God.
And I just think, you know what? So often we want to make an impact and we want to get a return for our impact. But when we just have this desire to help other people for no other reason, it's amazing how our world can shoot it back to us. And so she was amazing. The charity was so supportive of our time. We lived at Ronald McDonald House, which was horrible because I love Ronald McDonald House, don't get me wrong, but I lived there as a sick little boy for many years, and now I was back there with my own sick little boy. And then we got the call that our son had an illness called sepsis, blood disease. They told us that we had 5 days with him. And we had to prepare his funeral. We had to get ready to say goodbye. And I remember standing next to his bed, and I'd like to think I was talking, but I probably was yelling. And I was saying, you take my house, take my car, take everything that I've ever earned in my life, but please don't take my little boy. And God didn't take him, and he is still here with us today, and he's a beautiful, healthy, happy little 4.5-year-old boy, and he shits more than we can imagine, and he eats more than we can imagine, and we love him more than we could ever imagine. And in 2020, we went into complete lockdown with my immune system. I wasn't allowed to be out in public. And we were in lockdown for 9 months. And during that, I convinced my wife that we should practice. And in 2021, she gave birth to a gorgeous little girl. And now we have Lachlan James and Summer Grace. And we are just eternally grateful to experience the love of a child and the blessing of being a parent.
Oh, my God. Well, I didn't know all of this. Oh, that is the emotions that I went through hearing and visualizing that is beyond. Oh my God. How has being a parent changed you outside of, I guess, that turmoil? I think it's hard because for the much of it, it has been turmoil.
Yeah, it has. But I think, and I'm sure every parent is listening, every part of your priorities change. You know, I can sign a massive contract with a client, and then my son gets sick, and I give it all away just to have my healthy son. You know, I didn't realize that you could actually go on living with your heart in somebody else's body. Like, and that's how I feel. I feel like I don't own myself anymore. All I want is for my kids to be happy. All I want is for my kids to be healthy and safe, and everything else is no longer important. You know, the house that we live in, the cars that we drive, as long as they're happy and safe, then that's all that matters. And you know, I for a long time I was driven by power, privileges, and possessions. And now as a dad, I'm really focused on patience, persistence, and perspective. And that's been a beautiful shift for me.
Do you have any advice if anyone's listening and they're feeling like it's been a hard ride, or they're going through or about to go through or have been through some pretty traumatic stuff, and they're just feeling like, I don't know if I have it, I don't know if there's something on the other side for me that's that's going to get better. Do you have any advice on what can help in those times?
Yeah, a couple of things for me. The first thing is the cards analogy. You know, someone said to me, geez, you've been dealt with some really shit cards. I think that whilst ever I'm being dealt cards, that means I'm still in the game. And whilst ever I'm still in the game, it's about how I choose to play those cards that allows me to live a great life. And I say to everybody that's listening, or anybody that's going through a tough time, you know, don't spend your life comparing your cards to other people. And be grateful that you still have cards. Be grateful that you're still in the game, and play those cards as effectively as what you can. I think that has certainly helped me massively. Another thing for me is, I love the saying, they tried to bury me but didn't realize that I was a seed.
Ooh.
You know, there's so much depth to that. You know, unless you get buried, unless you get pushed down, unless you get dug into the earth, you will never actually blossom into the amazing human being that you have been put on this earth to become. And as I said earlier, you discover your why through hardship. So every step that you're taking through the battles that you're facing are actually getting you one step closer to discovering your why.
Yeah, that's similar to something I often say, which is that idea around we all want to bounce high in life, but just like a trampoline, that trampoline has to sink down low the higher we go.
Yeah.
I think about that when looking at others' lives, because we all want what old mate next door's got on the stuff we can see, and I'm like, why don't we assume that, just like yourself, that there's the same magnitude of depth and hardship in their life as well? And when we assume that, do you still want old mate's good stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Stop comparing other people's highlight reels with your day-to-day life. Yeah. You know, they only show you the good stuff. So stop comparing your challenges to their good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, you're so inspiring. You're so wonderful. And I have loved today's chat. How can people reach out, get in touch with you, hire you for billions to speak at amazing events, or anything else that you'd like to promote today?
Oh, I don't promote or sell anything. If you want to follow me, I'm on social media. It's just Michael Crossland. If you want to grab a copy of my book, obviously all the profits go to charity. That's on my website, michaelcrossland.com. And, challenge yourself every day to do something that your future self will be proud of, because I think that's what life should always be about.
Thanks for everything, Michael, and thanks for staying alive.
My pleasure, Tiff. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.